Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Crave Connection In Product podcast. I'm Aine, founder of In Product and host of Crave Connection, and I'm joined today by Aine Mckay, head of product at Autogen AI. Welcome to the podcast, Aine. So pleased to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. We've been around for a little under 2 years, and we focus on helping companies and organizations win more business through the use of AI and how they write tenders, bids, and proposals.
You had, I suppose, a focus on the emergence of new roles, practices, and value drivers within that product trio due to the rapid expansion of generative AI. And so it'd be great to hear your opinions for those who attended, but also for those who didn't get to come along to get to dig into the topic itself, because it's a pretty big one, as we found out on the night, and I don't think we got a chance to cover everything.
I'd love to be a speaker at the meetup. I think the topic's a really interesting one because it's something that impacted everyone in the room. It's something that people could really cling on to. So what does it mean for your organization? Thought it opened up a really rich conversation amongst the group. And also it was just really great for me personally just to hear how it works in other organizations, what has been working, what hasn't, and also just the things that people are interested to know in terms of how we've expanded out our product trio offering, particularly in Autogen over the last 18 months or so.
So I suppose, from your experience at Autogen AI, you've changed rapidly and grown rapidly. So, why was it important for you to take part in that meetup and to talk about that topic specifically?
So the product trio is something that is very alive within Autogen. That's how we make our decisions. That's how we default in terms of who's going to make decisions and how do we make quality decisions. So I find it just an interesting topic to talk about because it's changed a lot. It's changed a lot since I started my career, but also it's changed a lot since I've been at Autogen. We've had to adapt. We've learned things along the way. We've definitely got a few things really wrong. And because we work in the AI space and we have to move really, really quickly, we've had to make decisions really quickly in terms of what works and what doesn't. And a lot of those decisions have been based around the team setup and the product trio itself and fundamentally how we make decisions as an organization, because all our product decisions are so critical for our business impact.
I suppose you mentioned it there, the product trio has changed so much since you started your career, and I think in most recent years we've seen a real escalation in terms of that change, and I suppose blending of roles within the product trio and in wider products like teams. So what do you think are the key kind of market factors that are driving that change at the moment?
Yeah, it's interesting because the way I see product trios, what is lovely about it and what's great about it is that it's built for flexibility. So not every organization is going to be the same. Not everyone's going to have a team that's set up with the perfect amount of designers, the perfect amount of product managers and engineers as well. And actually, what happens is that those teams do get quite blended. They can sometimes, responsibilities can be somewhat interchangeable or adapt over the course of maybe even a project. That's what I think so great about the product trio is that, you can get an engineer that can pick up some product management responsibilities. You can get a fabulous product manager that is more technically savvy or more design centric. And the same for designers, they can pick up particular responsibilities within a team. What I think is great about that is that then you get this high quality decision making capability within any given team. But the core at any product trio is the ability to be cross-functional. And that's kind of the core principle of having a product trio is it doesn't need to be those particular people within a team, but just that there's that representation of the cross-functionality. I think the blending of roles isn't really a problem. I think often the key market factors that maybe drive that within an organization in particular is often it comes down to cost. Can we afford to have all of these different roles together at the same time? The other factor, and we've had this at Autogen, is the stage at which you're at. Right at the beginning, we just had engineers and engineers were doing everything. Then as we slowly grew the team, in the first few months, then we introduced a designer and then we actually introduced product management and got that kind of traditional product trio representation together. So I think the market trends could be, as I said, to do with the stage, but also then the stage can obviously always evolve. So it doesn't mean that you need to be perfection at the very start of starting any team. And then I guess the other thing I've always noticed throughout my career is the lack of understanding of certain rules, the lack of understanding of the value that certain rules can bring. Especially you see this with things like research, speaking to customers, and obviously that's everyone's responsibility within a team and should be shared amongst the teams. But sometimes it's, different rules really need to be sold in to senior stakeholders and people within the organization to really truly understand the value.
I think that was quite apparent, like through the like panel conversation. I think we've had people who are working in startups who their roles have become like really merged, and I think that's obviously a kind of cost perspective. And also, like you said, around like people really, I think Elliot was quite hot on like advocating for research and making sure that research was part of their team from like the very beginning, but really proving the need for that.
Mm.
How do you see that kind of collaboration piece like has changed in more recent years?
Yeah, I think there.
Changed.
Yeah, I've certainly seen a change. I think, especially over like the last 5, 6, 7 years, it's went from being very specific in your field. So you're an expert in your field, and that's all that you bring to the team. So, if you're a designer, you're there to design. If you're an engineer, you're only there to engineer. And if you're a product manager, you're often quite there to do everything else, fill the white space. Where the transition that I've seen, and certainly from the talent that we're bringing into the organization, is that there's a hunger to want to do more, and there's a hunger to want to learn other skills and be quite transferable across multiple different roles. And for us, like that's excellent. Like that means that we're getting people that are obviously hungry, but also really want to be proactive within their team and truly showcase that cross collaboration that I feel like it really needs to be. So like we see, as I said before, we see engineers that want to take up more product management style responsibilities. It doesn't mean that they're still not an engineer. It just means that they're taking up additional responsibilities that fit within a team.
Yeah.
And the same can be said for, PMs and designers as well. So I think those traditional boundaries are almost being worn down in some cases, but it doesn't remove the need to still have your expertise within the team. Like I would never want to get to a place where, we're bringing in expertise, but we're not actually using it. We're expecting them to do more, stretching them in the wrong places. That I guess is the balance that we look out for is, yeah, absolutely. Pick up additional responsibilities if you've been interested in it, or, if the team really need it, if it helps you make a really high value, high impact decision or move faster, but don't take it away from obviously just your specialism overall.
Mhm. I suppose it really like supports in terms of like empathy and understanding the like what impact your role is having as part of that trio. If you have more of an understanding of the other people that you're working with, their roles, but I think like you said, you when you look at like product management, especially, there's huge amount that you have to cover, and real kind of like being quite a generalist within that role as well. That I suppose there kind of has to become a line, doesn't there, in terms of like where do you cut off and where do you move on. So I suppose what in terms of like embracing that overlap, I suppose what you're saying there is like, yeah, we that is a positive, and that collaboration piece has been improved with that kind of merging of where there's not a specific kind of line and cut off. Anything which you think that we just need to be conscious of when we're merging between those roles?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I loved your call out to being empathetic to one another's roles and responsibilities. I think that we've definitely seen that at Autogen, where we've had designers pick up some PM responsibilities, and they've been so overwhelmed or so impressed by just the magnitude of the role. As you said, it's like there's so much to do within product management. But I think that there often are those really clear lines between the roles, but also it's up to the teams to decide what those lines are, and where they're comfortable, like what is their comfort of the greyness. So there's always going to be overlap, there's always going to be greyness. As a team, you can kind of put in your own measures and temperature checks to make sure that if someone is taking on additional responsibilities, that it makes sense for them to do. It's a good use of their time for them to do that, but we're still leveraging what they're really good at. And often, that's something that I would certainly put back onto the teams to decide. In other cases, in other extremes, like I think there's areas which I think more generally we just wouldn't be comfortable, where potentially there's a difference between a PM making some mock-ups or a vision design versus, full full high fidelity designs that make it into production. If that
Yeah.
happens, I mean, amazing. You might be on a different career track. Maybe product management's not exactly where you should be, but a lot of it comes back to the teams really working that out themselves.
The roles have changed pretty significantly over the last couple of years in comparison to what people have seen previously. And I think that's caused quite a lot of panic in a way, in terms of like, how do we keep up with that? How do we continue developing our skills? How do we navigate that kind of like career path in the future?
I think there's a few areas that I would unpick there. Product designer having to ultimately be the product manager in the team. Why do you need a designer to do product management as well? Is it because you don't have enough money that you can fund two roles, or is it that you don't need it? And what's been the business decision to get you there? And why have you made that decision to combine these roles? Because when there's combination of roles, yes, some things can move faster. It means that there's potentially more support and guardrails around the team. There could be better decision making, but also then it means the flip side of that is, if you're a designer coming into a team and you've got additional responsibilities, that's ultimately taking you away from some of the creative problem solving side that the business itself may need. So that would be an area I'd be trying to interrogate a little bit more: is, do you need a designer to be creative and really solve a user's problem, or do you need someone to really nurture and look after the team with like supplementary design capability? And I guess, like, just bringing it back to the individual themselves, is that what you want to do? Do you want a role that's quite hefty in other areas that you maybe haven't specialized in yet? And if that is the case, then I would always recommend, when you're in your teams, like, trying to find those opportunities where you can be proactive, where you can take on additional responsibility across maybe product management or other roles, or research, or prompt engineering obviously is going to be a new role that we probably talk quite a bit about. So finding areas where you can actually start to take on additional responsibilities while obviously not impacting overall business value.
Yeah, I think that was something that was quite key that came out of the meetup, in terms of, I think that really, rather than sometimes reflecting on like what the market is doing, reflecting on where you are and like what you want to do, what are you energized by? Because, even though there's a lot of roles that are becoming like more hybrid out there, that's still going to be very unique to every business. So there's going
Yeah.
to be opportunities where you can lean into those skills which energize you, you enjoy more, just because of the breadth, I think, that we're seeing in terms of like the roles needed and the specialisms within that. So, and with the rise of AI and new technologies, I suppose there's a discussion about whether certain roles like prompt engineers, and I know this is a very lived experience for you, should be integrated into like the existing product or design roles. So tell us a bit more about like your journey with introducing prompt engineering into the product team.
So I guess when I started Autogen back in about a year and a half ago, there were a couple of prompt engineers on the team. And to be honest, prompt engineering is so new, and it's in a lot of ways still very, very new, where we weren't really sure that we were like getting the best out of the individuals in terms of where does their work sit, how do they make decisions, and then obviously how does that make its way to the end user, and then crucially, how do we know if that's working and it's valuable, and how do we iterate really quickly? And I think when we started off, we had prompt engineering kind of sitting quite closely to R&D. It felt like a lot much closely aligned with R&D in terms of kind of exploratory, experimental, really trying to like figure things out for the first time, not quite sure what like the measure of success is in a lot of ways. That's kind of why we fitted prompt engineering into that space. And then we soon realized that wasn't really working, because prompt engineering obviously is all about the output, which is quite different to, I guess, like product delivery overall. We're so outcome driven. We're all about, okay, nothing like all about trying to reach specific metrics as quickly as possible and be very focused on what that outcome is. Whereas prompt engineering is a little bit more simple than that. Like it's a complex role and it's a complex set of complex responsibilities. But the end goal is the quality of the output, and it's just as simple as that. Can we get users to the ultimate output as quickly as possible? And it's a lot less outcome driven in that respect. So there's a little bit of unlearning, especially from myself, like trying to figure that out. And I know, like just saying that now, it seems like quite straightforward, but you'd be surprised just how long it took us from a product perspective to really be like, ah, wait, okay, maybe thinking of the problem the wrong way. So
Yeah.
I think once we kind of figured that out and got it a lot more aligned to kind of the user's definition of quality. So are they getting what they need out of the system in the way that they need it? Then it just made sense to bring it a lot closer to the product teams and the decisions that they were making. Prompt engineering pretty much underpins a lot of the product, 80% of the products. It's a really crucial, fundamental aspect of the product overall. And once we started to bring it closer to the teams, we kind of had prompt engineering sitting within product, and then actually that eventually became prompt engineers sitting in product teams. Then we started to see a lot more success in terms of the pace at which we could make decisions, how we made decisions, also crucially getting that cross functionality into decision making. So the importance to when you're making a prompt engineering decision, it's not just about like what's sitting under the hood, it's also about like how users are engaging with it and the front end and the user experience overall. So getting prompt engineers closer to the designers was really helpful, and also just getting them embedded into the overall process as well really helped. Um, in saying that though, even once we got to there and we felt like we kind of cracked it, it's still not been perfect. And I think the area that we've not focused much on, and now we're really feeling it, and now we're having to make changes, is the prompt engineering operations and overall ops of how it runs. There's just some best practice principles, all of those things that underpin how you do things. That we're kind of trying to catch up on now. So I think that's where we've made a few mistakes along the way.
Do you think just what you mentioned there around obviously as a product person, you were having to do a little bit of like unlearning. Do you think that with, I suppose, product managers having to work, should be working obviously with new kind of technology, do you think that is changing the way the role of product?
So I think not in the immediate term. Like our product managers kind of operate how you would expect product managers to operate. I think where we're seeing a shift is their ability to pick up some prompt engineering tasks. So when it comes to like quality control, when it comes to experimentation, when it comes to being able to take those insights and then really rapidly iterate and be comfortable in coaching the team, being comfortable in live experimentation. And that's where we're heading with prompt engineering. So like, I guess to answer the question, is it changing product management? It's not necessarily changing it, but it does mean that product management are again having to adopt this whole new kind of responsibility and critical thinking in terms of what quality really means when you talk about a prompt engineering output.
Nice. And I think, we've focused on the product trio quite a lot from like a hands-on perspective, but I think also from like a leadership perspective, in most companies you have that product trio at that kind of more leadership level as well. So how important is it to maintain clear role definitions versus like fostering a more fluid, collaborative environment at that leadership level?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think so. How I guess we work at Autogen is we have product leadership and then a VP of engineering. So I work directly with VP of engineering, and then we pull in design where we possibly can, because we don't have design at the leadership level just yet. So I guess we are kind of use that kind of case study of we've started off a certain way, we're at this stage as a startup, and then now as we've gone along in our journey, it's starting to show that we've got gaps in certain areas, and one of them is around more design leadership and design decision making at that level. So I think for us, in terms of like how critical it is, it's been instrumental in terms of building the product, having product and engineering representation, and then me and the VP of engineering has tried to like fill gaps where we can.
Yeah.
But also I think we've seen some of the pain of not having that kind of true trio necessarily in all of the conversations, and then we've had to like supplement in certain areas where probably decision making could have been quicker, but also could have been higher quality as well, um, from the leadership perspective.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think Elliot, again on the panel, you know, mentioned that engineering from his company had actively asked to stay out of those kind of like leadership decisions and to stay out of that product trio at that kind of like exec level. You know, I think it's really interesting to see how different businesses work. And I suppose it comes down to, you know, their product trio was like delivery, products and design. So still a trio, but in a very like different way again. I think Harriet mentioned it quite often as well in the different like trios that she's worked as part of. I think it very much comes down to probably the people and the way the teams are set up, how they collaborate. You can obviously see in the conversation with you and Mike, you know, on the panel, he seems a very product focused, you know, VP of engineering. So you can see that he's really bringing in that kind of collaboration there. So it's quite interesting, I think, from a leadership level. I think that's where we see quite a lot of variances, and especially in stages of business, it's like, when do you need that person at that level for each area? I think that's one of those which I don't think is so market reflective. I think it's just the way in which an organization works when it comes to that more leadership level.
Yeah.
So for those kind of like looking to enter the industry and transition into, I suppose, a role in the product trio, what is there any guidance that you would give people, or specific skills which you think is really important for people to be transitioning and learning more of in the market which we're in at the moment to be as successful as they can be?
Yeah, definitely. So I think Mike mentioned this on the panel in the evening, and I know it maybe doesn't seem that tangible, but the people that succeed the most throughout even our interview process are people that can articulate proactivity so easily. And it comes through very clearly, very quickly. So people that can see a problem, try and figure it out, bring it to the team, work collaboratively, but they're obsessed about trying to fix the problem as quickly and efficiently as possible. That's our definition of, you know, being super proactive. If they aren't really sure about how to solve a problem, or if they're not really sure who to talk to, again, throughout the interview process, that normally comes through quite clearly for us. So if you're willing to go and have conversations, find the answer, and if you can't find the answer, you'll find the person that will have the answer.
Yeah.
That's really what we look for.
For people who may not be that experienced in their careers, you can do that in your day-to-day lives. Like
Yeah.
I speak to a lot of people who, you know, really impressed me when I'm chatting to them early on in their career, that they've just found a problem in their day-to-day lives, and they're like, how do I solve that? And like, you know, how do I like create something which is gonna, you know, fix that? So I think, you know, even if it's not a learned skill through your career, you can show that like before you have that experience as well in a kind of commercial setting.
Yeah, absolutely. And even just the drive and the hunger to learn more about large language models, you know, what's coming out, have you tested it? What did you test it out on? What did you use it for? Those are all the really interesting things that we would look for in terms of, you know, even across the board in any kind of role within our product teams. Yeah, even, you know, obviously, you know, people have things, the side hustles that go on outside of work. That's not something that we tend to look for, but if they have something that they show an interest of things just outside of work, they're proactive, they are looking for problems to solve, and they're looking for ways to solve problems. That's really what stands out to us.
Nice. Just to finish off, a question which you're definitely not expecting, but something I ask everyone on the podcast. I can just feel the fear arising. So obviously you've got a real extensive career, like working in like different countries, different environments. So I always want to, I suppose, support people to kind of gain connections in product and to learn from people around them. Is there anyone who, I suppose, like online or even like a kind of course or anything like that, which you think has been like pivotal in terms of like your learning throughout your career? Anyone you think that people in product should be following, should be keeping their eye out for, or should be, you know, engaging with their like content and learning from?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I love Melissa Perry. I'm sure a lot of
Yeah.
people come on here and say that. So I mean, I am an avid listener of her podcast. I know have her book, and I've based actually a lot of how we set up product on her work, as well as Teresa Torres from obviously Continuous Discovery and the basis of Product Trio as we know it today. But then a lot of what I listen to and get a lot of guidance from is other things like how I built this. I love that podcast. So that's about how founders have founded their companies and built them from the ground up. And I think the thing that is always so clear across those podcasts in terms of the guests that they have is that they have a really clear vision. They face
Mm.
a lot of issues. They stumble across a lot of issues, but they like find a way to get through it. And there's, true definition of productivity in that case. And also there's a lot of experimentation, and that is fundamental to everything that we do within product. If you're not willing to experiment, then, you know, you're willing to just always be kind of like on the path to the wrong direction, in my opinions. That's where I get a lot of inspiration from. And yeah, obviously Lenny's newsletter and all the classics.
Oh, I've not heard of the podcast. I'm gonna get that on my podcast
Yeah,
list. Good timing. I'm in need of a new one. I've
yeah,
become stagnant with my podcasts. There we go. Socially, I've got some good some
yeah.
good guidance from that as well. And yeah, thank you so much, both from I suppose hosting like the meetup with us. It was a brilliant vibe, brilliant evening. I know so many people came away with so many more connections, which is what we're looking to achieve with the community.